Folks, thanks a lot for the 80,000 subscribers. You guys are awesome. But we're not stopping here. Let's push it, folks, to 100,000 subscribers. So give that support to the channel and subscribe and hit that like button down below to reach our goal of 153 likes. And now let's go for it. In the first scene of Windbreaker, a boy is walking on a tightrope inside his mind as traumatic memories invade his nightmare when he was rejected for being who he was at school, for not having anyone to take care of him, or for his strange appearance. His eyes and hair disgusted society, and this isolation led the young man to the darkest depths of his suffering. When he finally wakes up, he feels anger as a consequence of this isolation. In the commercial district of Tampu, children played joyfully on the streets on a pleasant morning, while the rejected young man philosophizes alone that he only cares about the strongest, never the weak. In a quiet street, a group of cowards surrounds a girl, threatening to smash the eggs she bought into the leader's face if they don't leave soon, but she won't do it because it's a waste of food. The leader of the bullies mocks the fact that she likes strong girls, while grabbing the girl's wrists as she tries to leave. Meanwhile, the rejected young man reflects that guys who are weak but think they're strong are the most despicable, and soon encounters a bunch of such guys and asks them to stop bothering the girl. The tallest boy doesn't like the intrusion and tries to punch him, but the young man with strange eyes shows the disgust he feels for bullies of that kind and finishes off a whole gang in the blink of an eye. Not satisfied with the beating, he grabs the leader by the collar and tells him never to forget his name, then says he's Haruka Sakura from Furin High School, the one the weak should avoid and the strong should seek out. With the problem solved, Sakura walks away as if nothing had happened. Then the girl who was saved goes after him and thanks him for the help. Strangely, Sakura takes a few seconds to realize she's talking to him, then loses his temper and says that saving her wasn't his intention, showing his lack of social skills. Confused, the girl asks if he's hungry. He refuses. However, in the next scene, he ends up being taken to the diner where the girl works, and getting to know the boy a bit more, she finds out he's from out of town and remarks it's rare to see people moving to this city. Until recently, this place had a reputation for constant gang fights and organized crime, so it wasn't exactly a destination people wanted to move to. In fact, she herself, who introduces herself as Tachibana Kotoha, wasn't born in this city. During this conversation, Sakura wonders why this girl is being so friendly with him, since he's used to being feared by others, especially after beating up 5 guys in front of her. Seeing that the guy was lost in thought, Konoha suggests he try the omurice, and upon tasting the dish, it was love at first bite, even though Sakura was disappointed to find out they don't deliver food home. Lowering the guard of the irritated boy, she brings up his appearance, asking if he wears colored contacts or dyes his hair. Sakura immediately frowns, but Konoha shamelessly examines his strange marble-like eye up close. Sakura backs off from the advance and challenges the girl to a fight because people always make fun of his appearance. However, Konoha likes Sakura's look and recalls with a hand gesture that she once saw a boy with very different hair. Sakura emphasizes that appearance doesn't matter in a fight, which is why he joined Furin, where the weakest and most powerful reside, with daily faction wars that uphold the law of the jungle. Whether it's Christmas or International Peace Day, it's all-out brawl at Furin, and that's where Sakura intends to reach the top. Kotoha comments that the guy is talking tough, but he corrects her by saying it's quite the opposite, a bunch of degenerates in an endless battle to crown the worst of the worst. The girl admits the young man is dedicated and must be eager to start studying since he's already in uniform, even though classes don't start until tomorrow. Sakura is outraged by the blessed girl's pathetic understanding of Furin High School's real nature, so he asks her to settle things outside. However, the friendly Mr. Yama interrupts the boy's tantrum and thanks Konoha for the meal as he heads for the exit, and Sakura has the decency to hand over a package the old man had forgotten. As a reward, the old man left some sweets for the young man because that bag was a gift for his grandson. But Sakura's traumas prevent him from understanding why someone would be kind to a strange kid wearing a delinquent uniform. Just to show you the suffering he goes through, once Sakura took a wallet from a guy's pocket to teach him to be more careful, he was unfairly accused of theft. For these and other reasons, Konoha believes Sakura made the right choice in choosing Furin, but she's sure he'll never reach the top, and she still thinks he has to forget about it or no one there will take him seriously. After all, the boy is alone in this war. When they touch on the wound of his loneliness, a trigger is activated in Sakura's mind and he starts to seethe with anger, but Konoha makes it clear before he leaves that he will understand what she's talking about when he meets the members of Furin. On the street of the Amagusa beverage shop, a gang is wreaking havoc everywhere, and the owners of the establishment try to call someone to solve the problem, until Sakura shows up and notices that the insolent guy who got beat up earlier brought some more friends to play on the street. Sakura tries to ignore the gang and cross, but the leader reminds him he hasn't forgotten the name Haruka Sakura, though the Furin newbie forgot his. As they notice the aspect of the boy's hair and eye, All the bullies joined forces to tease him in the way that shaped his life up to this point, with him always being rejected and denied by everyone around him. Faced with relentless scorn, Sakura gave up on being accepted but made up his mind to find some value in himself. So while the gang leader reminds him that the earlier incident wouldn't go unpunished, Sakura punches him square in the nose, even though he was always sure it was other people who wanted to stay away from him. After all, in Sakura's mind, his appearance is bizarre, but still, he never understood what he did to deserve so much repulsion. During this reflection, he lays the smackdown on the entire gang without mercy, consumed by the fury that courses through his veins due to the insults suffered, wondering what the heck being at the top has to do with being alone, especially because there's only room for one at the top, and that one needs to be himself, Hakura Sakura. Devastating his enemies one by one, some of the remaining wrongdoers start to run, while Kotoha, innocently washing dishes, ends up leaving the diner to see what was happening and is taken hostage by the gang. The gangster who grabbed the girl remembers that the Furin never do anything when a rival takes a resident hostage, but Sakura is outraged by the fact that the man brought a knife to the party, so he takes him down without hesitation. He advises the gang to reconsider their choices regarding the type of weapon they use to fight, so the rest of them go after him. There are many opponents at once, and Sakura knows that protecting Kotoha amidst this chaos could go south, but he doesn't know why he's protecting her since he gains nothing from it. Moreover, one of the opponents picks up the knife from the ground and cuts the protagonist's ankle, leaving him increasingly cornered by the enemy's strength until a gangster prepares to hit the boy with his baseball bat. However, just in time, a Furin member thanks the first-year rookie for his help and asks Kotoha not to tell you-know-who that she was in danger. Then this man knocks down the enemy with a bat and asks the gang not to stir up this kind of trouble in the city, while 3 more Furin members approach the commotion. The Furin who had just arrived for the brawl are frustrated by the lack of people in the opposing gang, while the enemies notice that the one in front of them is Hiraji, a feared fighter from the Furin. Still, they feel they can gain the upper hand, so they go after their opponents. The Furin leader, Hiraji, instructs Matsumoto with his mohawk, Kaji with his headphones, and Yanaji with his military-style haircut to beat up the enemy gang. In the midst of the brawl, Sakura is about to be hit by one of the opponents and can't react because of his injured ankle, but Hiraji prevents the worst and tells the rookie to run if he's not going to fight. Sakura gets annoyed and says that was his opponent, but Hiraji makes it clear that he won't be able to protect anyone standing in the crossfire. At this point, the surrounding residents gather at the windows and balconies of the buildings, cheering enthusiastically as if they were in the Colosseum of ancient Rome. Sakura doesn't understand what's happening, so Kotoha remembers, as she mentioned earlier, that this city really was a sewer of gangs and organized hooligans, but something changed that reality, and that something was Furin High School. Upon their arrival, the first thing they did was put up a sign at the city entrance, warning that those who harm others, destroy things, or have malice in their hearts will be destroyed by the Bafurin. Initially, they carried the name of Furin High School, but over time, the residents renamed the group to honor these defenders of the city, the Bafurin known as Windbreakers. In light of this, Kotoha finds Sakura's view of them amusing, thinking they were a bunch of violent crazies, but acknowledges that they were known as such until 2 years ago. But now they are loved and even necessary because the city's public safety is truly garbage. With this reality check, Sakura sees with his own eyes that these guys, even fighting in the streets like this and having this appearance, are loved by the people, not rejected. At this moment, some residents approach to praise the boy too because they saw how he handled himself alone at the beginning of the brawl. An elderly lady worries about providing first aid to his injured ankle, and Sakura threatens to freak out again in the face of all this sudden acceptance, until Kotoha takes over the bandaging and reminds him that Sakura is indeed alone, but not because of his fault or intention. Therefore, she emphasizes that the people of the city need people like him. Sakura replies that he doesn't need anyone, but the girl questions why he returned Mr. Yama's gift or even protected her during the whole fight. The truth is that Sakura hasn't given up on others yet, and he doesn't need to. But to demonstrate the truth in this feeling, Kotoha asks the boy to lift his head and look into the eyes of the people around, because only then can he become what he desires so much. Finally, Sakura accepts the sermon, albeit in his violent way, and affirms that even he is capable of being a delinquent who plays superhero and walks around as if he were the city's shield. That he delivers another kick to the leader of the opponent's face while wondering if he can finally establish some genuine connection, and thus begins the story of a useless, worthless, and hated boy who will become the hero of the city. The next day, Sakura shows up at the diner where Kotoha is acting all crazy, so the girl asks if he's got a stomach ache, until Mrs. Sato pops out from behind the guy after making him carry her all around town. He tells her to get off, but to top it off, the lady can't get out of there by herself. Sakura threatens to end the old lady, and since she's had enough of the young man's tantrums, she decides to get off on her own, driving Sakura even more crazy, especially since Mrs. Sato argued that she couldn't stand up because of her back pain. Fed up with it, he turns to run away, but Kotoha surprises him with 2 egg sandwiches with seasonal fruits because today is his school entrance ceremony. So she asks if he's excited, but the kid is still upset because he left early to take a stroll and ended up being used as a pack mule. At that moment, a weird guy comes in shouting for Kotoha's name until he trips at the entrance and falls flat on the ground. His name is Nurei, and clearly he puts a lot of value on his aesthetic appearance, so much so that he asks his friend what she thought of his look for the ceremony. Sakura points out that the uniform still has the tag on it, and the young man falls flat on his back trying to find the tag. With some effort, he also manages to find the tag on the pants as a bonus, and Sakura wonders how a guy like him ended up at Furin. Nurei doesn't let it slide and replies that he's never seen Sakura before either, so he presumes he's from out of town. Sakura confirms the suspicion, but has no intention of discussing more about his life. However, Nurei approaches and comments on the newcomer's hair and eyes, asking if it's all due to stress. Kotoha bursts into laughter and introduces Sakura to Nurei, explaining that he arrived in town yesterday. As for the vain guy, his name is Nurei Hiro, and he wonders why nobody from outside would come to this place. Then he warns that Furin Academy is not just any school because the Ba-Furin are justice heroes who decided to fight for the city, helping the weak and destroying evil, and everyone who joins this school must carry that same will. Nurei, for example, is part of it and is recognized by the residents, but someone who nobody knows who is ending up in this community doesn't make much sense. So without paying much attention to the provocation, Sakura replies that he wants to be at the top of the school. He agrees somewhat ironically that the Furin are indeed like saving heroes and that many of them are visibly strong, but becoming the most powerful among them is something that would satisfy him. With a serious expression, Nurei asserts that this is not possible, only to then warn Sakura that he'll go bald if he insists on trying. Kotoha laughs again and Sakura challenges the guy to settle it outside, but Nurei looks at his watch and says he has to leave now. Kotoha asks if he's not going to eat his usual breakfast, but he makes up an excuse that he only came to show off his look. Thus, before leaving, he announces that from today on, he'll also be an ally of justice. Then he bangs his head on the door and leaves. Kotoha comments that that guy is quite interesting, but Sakura thinks he's just a bratty kid who bulldozes others to talk non-stop, and that the Furin should be stricter with their members. After all, people who only care about appearance are the type who run away at the most important moment, and there's nothing more pathetic than that. Still on the subject, Kotoha asks if Sakura knows the color of the coffee fruit. In his mind, it's brown, but she says it's red and smooth like a cherry. At first, she thought the fruits were the beans sold in jars, but that's just the seed. In other words, seeing something from one angle doesn't mean you understand its entirety, and that also applies to this judgment against Nurei. Therefore, Sakura should talk to him and try to understand him, because that's how you really get to know a person. So to practice the lesson, Sakura asks if that guy is good at fighting, and Kotoha notes that the guy only cares about getting into fights with others. After leaving the cafe, Sakura reflects on what his friend said, but he still thinks he's right in what he said, regardless of everything. At that moment, a baker offers a fresh bread to the boy, who doesn't understand the reason for this gesture. The baker explains that the Furin are always helping the people of the city, so this would be a way to repay them. Moreover, the baker next to him reminds Sakura that he was one of the Furin in yesterday's fight, and this embarrasses the boy too much to accept the bread, but the baker insists and hands it to him in a bag for him to eat later. Walking through the streets, Sakura notices that the Furin are really recognized by the community and highly respected, but the boy is still not used to this kind of reception from others, so in his mind, the others are the ones acting strange, not him. Remembering the conversation with Kotoha again, he wonders if he too didn't decide beforehand that nobody could look at him like that. Suddenly, a girl asks for Furin's help because in one of the alleys in the area, Nurei was cornered by a gang. According to the leader, he was finally having an interesting conversation with a woman, but Furin ruined everything by interfering. Nurei argues that the girl wasn't into it, but the gang doesn't care and leaves. Nurei grabs the leader by the collar and doesn't let him go. The man elbows the boy in the face, while everyone around laughs at humiliation. Despite this, once again, Nurei grabs the opponent, reciting the Furin motto about eliminating those who hurt others and carry evil in their hearts. The man gets tired of this nonsense and starts punching Nurei to make him let go. But just as he was about to deliver the blow that would make the boy fall, Sakura arrives with a flying kick and throws the guy away. Nurei asks why Sakura is saving him, as well as the other gang members, but Sakura makes it clear that he can't stand weaklings who think they're strong. So the gang attacks the boy, who in the blink of an eye takes down all the enemies. Nurei can't believe what he just witnessed, and when Sakura looks directly back at him, Furin's proud member swallows hard in fear. As the savior was leaving, Mirai questions if he's frustrated to have such a weak companion in school, but Sakura only responds that everywhere there will always be someone who thinks they're more than they really are, and those kinds of people should wake up to avoid embarrassment. Then Mirai tells how he was frequently beaten up in the gym until one day a Furin member saved him. Mirai thought he would be scared of that guy, but Furin was very nice to him, so the boy wanted to be like one of those guys, strong, kind, and helpful. At that moment, Sakura remembers when he said that those who only care about appearance are the first to run away from a fight, and obviously that wasn't the case with this boy. So he tells the young man that there's no use in crying even if he's weak, and in the end, adds that he's not as pathetic as he thinks. Soon, the girl from earlier appears and asks how the boy is, explaining that she didn't know what would happen when that man grabbed her arm, so Mirai saved her. Therefore, she thanks the boy and also Sakura, and as always, the strange boy gets flustered and starts to leave. However, Mirai calls the protagonist back and appears with a notebook, asking about the height, weight, and blood type of the type of girl he likes. Then he measures Sakura at 5 feet 7 inches and guesses he weighs about 132 pounds. Sakura punches the guy's head and tells him to stop being weird, so Mirai explains that he likes to gather data on people he thinks are cool, and then offers to actually show Sakura around the city, showing the people and places worth seeing, heading to the top. Soon Mirai pulls Sakura by his shirt and drags him to Furin High School. Upon arrival, a corridor of Okinawan cherry trees illustrated the place alongside the school flag, until an unknown Furin member welcomes the first-year newcomers. However, Sakura was actually still eating cold bread in the alley corner because, according to him, fighting makes him hungry. Mirai insists on heading straight to school, and after much insistence, the hungry student eventually follows his lead. Actually crossing the cherry tree corridor, Mirai proudly introduces the Bofurin base officially. Sakura looks excited and hopes to find inside people like those who fought alongside him against yesterday's gang. Then Mirai presents the list of names divided by class, and he's excited to see that he's in the same class as his new friend, even though the friend doesn't seem to be on the same wavelength. Taking another look at the list, Mirai sees that Su and Kiryu will also be his classmates, including Sujura. Although he never exchanged a word with any of them, he thinks they're all amazing. However, Sakura doesn't care about who's in his class, so he prepares to enter the school, but before that, Mirai discovers that he will also share the room with someone not so pleasant. For this reason, he asks Sakura to be friendly with everyone in the class, always keeping a beautiful smile on his face. After all, Bofurin gathers to protect the people of the city, so it wouldn't be strange to find a member there who doesn't like outsiders. Taking this into account, Sakura must first prove that he has no intention of harming the city. However, instead of paying attention to his companion, Sakura was stretching because he doesn't know what kind of people he will meet in this place, so he needs to be ready for anything. In the face of this, Mirai insists that the talk is serious because Sakura is an outsider, and any misstep in this godforsaken place, entire Furin will be against him. However, Sakura once again asserts that he doesn't care about having enemies because he will reach the top through fighting anyway. At that moment, he enters the classroom with a confident pose, and all the other students look directly at him with unfriendly faces. Mirai freaks out at the situation, but the atmosphere seems to please the buddy who accompanied him there. Then, a first classmate approaches calling Sakura by name, and as soon as the protagonist sets the base, Mirai tries to lighten the mood and asks who the dear eye patch-wearing colleague is. Thus, the guy politely introduces himself as Leonardo DiCaprio, but better known as Su, a foreigner who has an eye patch that seals an ancient Chinese spirit in his right eye. Mirai seems interested in the eye chat, while Sakura is sure this guy is making up a bunch of stuff. Anyway, Su assumes a much more serious expression and says that now it's time to talk about this guy Sakura. Mirai thinks prejudice against outsiders is about to start, but Su pats the new classmate on the back and comments that he was the star of the fight on the avenue yesterday. The students around ask what this story is about, so the eye patch-wearing member recounts that there was a fight between Furin and Spaltips, where Haraji showed up with other comrades, but the first to appear on the scene to protect the city was Sakura. This story attracts the whole class closer to the protagonist, who as always doesn't know how to deal with this kind of attention, but at least Mirai is relieved that no one saw his friend as an adversary. Soon, one of the Furin asks what Sakura, who is not from the city, intends to do here, so he replies that he intends to reach the top. Everyone looks at him dumbfounded, and Mirai tries to explain that the guy didn't mean he came to beat everyone up. But when Sakura responds that's exactly what he meant, a table crosses the room, thrown by a student who doesn't seem so receptive. Sakura is satisfied to meet a challenger, but his friend warns that that's Kyotaro Sugishiya, probably the most dangerous guy in this class. Without ceremony, Sugishiya advances towards the newcomer and punches a table that pushes everyone away. but his target is intact and without losing his pose. Watching the newbie go head-to-head with the veteran, the Furin around are left slack-jawed. Suo remarks that sparks are flying, something Mirai doesn't find interesting. Suo tells Sakura it's not a good idea to say you want to reach the top in front of Sugishita because he's the type of guy recognized for great skill since elementary school, and he's the only one considered a Bofurin, even though he's not even in high school. And most importantly, he's blindly loyal to the guy on top now, almost like worship, so pitying the one who says they want the top in front of him. One of the students tells Suo to stop provoking and break up the fight, or else the outsider will end up dead, but Suo is itching to get into this mess. Shortly after, Sugishita misses a punch and becomes vulnerable to a counterattack, so Sakura manages to land a kick on his chin. After that, he mocks Sugishita for being a fanatic who doesn't think for himself and would never lose to this kind of people. The two were about to continue the fight, but then the voice of someone testing if the room's sound system was working, along with another assistant who also has no idea what he's doing, comes from a sound system in the room. When all the students are paying attention, the man on the other side loudly congratulates everyone for entering the school. Sakura complains they interrupted right at the best moment, then calls Sugishita back to the fight, but he's seriously focused on the words coming from the device along with all the other students. On the other end of the line, the man identifies himself as Hajime Umemiya, the Bofurin representative. Hearing this, Sakura clenches his fists in excitement, finally knowing who the Furin he needs to defeat to fulfill his goal is. Interestingly, Umemiya isn't very good at speeches and frequently forgets what he should say, and upon receiving the new students at the school, he improvises that they should enjoy their youth by going to the beach or something. It would be nice if everyone went to the beach together to eat shaved ice. Mary asks if he's really hearing that, then Sugishita questions what's wrong with shaved ice. Nevertheless, Umemiya acknowledges that not everyone will get along well enough in school to share shaved ice, but he hopes at least no one will fight on the first day of school, which immediately makes Sugishita wipe the blood from his mouth so as not to disappoint the boss. Finally, the representative emphasizes that the only thing that matters is that the Bofurin protect the city with all its people, things, and feelings. Hearing this, all the students respond enthusiastically, so Umemiya announces that the speech is over and now it's showtime. After that, Sakura observes that the Bofurin have a sense of unity and belonging he never imagined, wondering if it's solely because the leader is good at fighting. At that moment, Suo appears between Sakura and Sugishita and reminds them that this is the perfect moment for them to make amends, suggesting a handshake. Sakura asks what's with this guy because this fight is still going to have a second round, and it was Sugishita who started hitting him. Nuri asks why his friend's face is red and gets a bump on his head, while Suo leaves someone aiming for the top should know when not to engage in conflict. Moreover, he questions Sugishita, how the boss would react knowing he hit a fellow student. Thus, Sugishita extends his hand to his opponent and Nuri begs his friend to do the same. For his part, Sakura doesn't fare well in these moments of reconciliation, but it seems that it must be done, even though it's strange to touch someone other than in a fight. So seeing the handshake, Suo recalls the boss's words about the glow of youth, making the two angry. Soon several boys from the class hug the newbie and want to know how he managed to hit Sugishita, and while they debate about the fight, Sakura reflects that since arriving in this city, his human relationships were no longer solely based on contempt and violence. This reflection quieted the young man, and when another classmate asks if he's okay, Sakura shows his lack of social tact again, but at the same time he realizes that the human body temperature is warmer than he thought. Sometime later, a Bofurin calls all the students to go outside, and once there, Sakura found himself painting a graffiti-covered wall while wondering what the hell he's doing there. 30 minutes ago, Sakura complains that he just arrived in the classroom, but the superior doesn't want to hear it and tells everyone there to follow him to the courtyard. Checking his stopwatch, Haraji sees that it took people 7 minutes, 48 seconds, and 26 milliseconds to leave the room and comments that kindergarten is usually faster than that. Sakura pays attention to that guy and remembers he's the same one who appeared in yesterday's fight when he was saving Kotoha from the cafeteria. Suddenly, Haraji goes after Sakura and throws him to the ground, reminding him that he made it clear the kids shouldn't tell anyone that Kotoha was present in that place because if they find out she was in danger, it's going to be a lot of trouble. Finally, he gives the boy one more chance to keep his mouth shut, otherwise Haraji will end up vomiting blood from stress, although he has a remedy to relieve stomach pressure in the toughest moments. When Sakura backs away and Nurei asks what kind of guy Haraji is, so Sakura says he's just a weird guy who takes stomach medicine. Then Nurei quickly notes this information in his notebook. Sakura asks what this crazy interest is, so Nurei explains that Toma Hiraji is one of the 4 celestial kings of Bofurin. At the top of the school hierarchy, we have Umemiya. Below him, the 4 celestial kings, and each of them is captain of a class from each year. Each Celestial King from Group 1 in order has 4 different classes, and Sakura and Narai are from the Tamanshu class, for example. Soon Naraji tells everyone to split into groups of 4 or 5 to patrol the city. Each group must have a 3rd or 2nd year student, and these older students are the ones who will give the team orders. During the patrol, Sakura asks why she needs to stay on Subishida's team so soon, then Haraji explains that the leader asked him to keep an eye on both of them. Sakura argues that it wasn't even a fight because he just retaliated against the hairy guy's aggression, but Haraji doesn't care who started it and separates them again. While Sue comments that the Celestial King looks like a kindergarten teacher, with controlled tempers, Sakura wonders if it isn't easier to find those who cause trouble and punch them instead of walking around the streets. But Haraji teaches that Bofurin shouldn't start a fight because their function is to defend the city, not to initiate an offensive within it. Sakura finds that boring, but Haraji thinks the annoying one there is this kid who only thinks about fighting all the time. Suddenly, a candle rises somewhat crooked on the stairs, so the Celestial King calls his team to prevent an accident. Sometime later, Sakura is painting the tagged wall, while the owner of the wall says they'll probably tag it again soon. Sakura threatens to throw a fit, but Narai explains that this is also Bofurin's work. As soon as they finish the job, they are rewarded with a taiyaki each, a Japanese fish-shaped cake. Enjoying the sweet treat, Haraji comments that he understands Sakura for being so obsessed with fights because he himself was like that once, but being present in the community and fulfilling its needs is also fun. Then, as they arrive at a tunnel that provides structure for the passage of the metro, Sakura notices that on the other side there is a neighborhood of bars, and at the entrance to this neighborhood, there is a drawing of a dog that, according to him, is horrible. Nuri asks his partner to watch what he says because this is the border between Bofurin's area and another group's. On the other side of the metro tracks, the laws of Furin College no longer apply, but those of Shishitorin, the Lionheads, who have absolute faith and power. Sasakura comments that he liked the ideology of this faction until a boy with a 3-gym uniform appears on the other side of the tunnel, followed by 3 orange coats, the Shishitorin. Theoretically, the Bofurin cannot advance into that territory, and Haraji just hopes the boy can make it across. But when the rivals were about to lay hands on the boy, Sakura and Subishida together prevent it. Narai thinks it's madness for the duo to attack first in enemy territory, but since the fleeing boy is one of theirs, Sakura and Subishida argue that they are actually defending themselves. While Sakura tries to convince his colleague to take on the 2 rivals alone, Arima Yukinari and Kanuma Minoru mock the fact that their colleague is knocked out. Sakura wonders what's up with these guys until an orange coat arrives and scares the lower members. Even Haraji himself goes on high alert with the arrival of the second in command of Shishitorin, Joe Togame. Togame asks what the Furin are doing there, and soon notices the presence of the Celestial King and waves to all the Furin in a way that irritates Sakura with his slowness. Togame asks if the fallen orange coat is the work of the Furin, and everyone sees it as a threat. At this point, Sarwateri wakes up and rants against the opponent, saying that it's against the rules to meddle in others' territory. But Togame hits the boy on the head with the bottle he was holding and soon starts beating him because only the strong are worthy of declaring they have a territory, and Sarwateri showed with this defeat that he is just weak. Seeing that the boy was going to die, Haraji tells the opposing leader to stop. After all, they are from the same team. But Togame declares that this guy is no longer part of his team since he was defeated, and Shishitorin doesn't need losers. Sue comments that these guys don't seem very friendly, while Sakura is fed up with this twisted talk of absolute faith and power. So he approaches the opposing chief to tell them to his face how much the rival faction is a nest of weaklings. With this, the tension around rises to the sky, and Togame asks if they have disappointed the young Furin. The orange coats ask if they should kill the heated Furin, but Togame has a more evil plan than that, like commenting on the funny hair of the young man that looks like a reversey, and saying that he talks so fast that it's annoying. Finally, Togame decides what to do. The hot-headed Furin will stay right where he is while he leaves, but he emphasizes that he now knows Sakura's face, or as he prefers to call it, the face of Reversey. With the departure of Shishitorin, Nurai asks where the comrades' heads would act like that, because this mess will end in war, while Sue adds that he missed the timing to interrupt the tension, and Hiraji is pounding stomach medicine. Later, the Celestial King explains that Togame is one of the Shishitorin who cares most about the territory issue, so he won't let it go lightly, but that it's Hiraji's own fault for not acting first, and so he apologizes. Finally, he collects the boy from Gymnasium 3, Sasaki, and takes them all back to school. Arriving there, Hiraji knows he has to tell Yumimiya everything, which directly attacks his stomach, and Sakura wonders if it's really that bad to talk to the boss because he seemed friendly earlier. So they open the door and arrive at a rooftop with a friendly decoration. while the leader of the Furin cultivated his garden and seemed proud of the eggplant and bell pepper. And Sogi announces that there will be a Furin barbecue this summer. Hearing this, Sakura thinks this guy seems like he's from elementary school. Hiraji gives a heads up that there's a problem, but Yumemiya already knew the number of seedlings and space didn't match. So he asks what Hiraji wants to eat, and when Hiraji replies that he actually wants to talk about shishito, the leader thinks the guy is talking about shishio peppers and remarks that it's things like that which attack the celestial kings suffering gastritis. Still incredulous, Sakura refuses to believe that this Yumemiya runs the whole Bafurin, while Subishita grabs the newbie by the collar and reminds him it's Mr. Yumemiya to him. The argument makes the leader notice everyone's presence, so he insists on explaining to the group one by one the spices he's growing in his garden, emphasizing that each one has its own personality. Hiraji complains that this guy never stops talking for a minute, while Sakura comments that it's all just weeds, making Subishita scowl again. Although Sakura is fed up, he acknowledges that Yumemiya dominated the room just with his voice this time. So he wonders what the secret is for this guy to command so much respect. At this moment, Sasaki can't bear the anxiety anymore and declares what's going on. He found the thief in the commercial district and chased him until accidentally invading the Shishitoran's territory. The young man deeply regrets making this mistake as he admires and respects the Bafurin greatly, but that doesn't change the fact that he's the trigger for starting a war against the Shishitoran. However, Yumemiya surprises everyone by knowing the young man's name and thanking him for what he did, because even though it led to a conflict, his intention was to protect the city, and there's no need to apologize for that. Now all Sasaki needs to do is leave this problem to the elders. After reassuring the boy, Yumemiya asks how he was saved, and upon hearing that the Furin kicked an enemy away, the leader bursts into laughter, leaving everyone embarrassed by this strange behavior. Hiraji feels sick to his stomach with guilt for not doing anything to prevent this, but Yumemiya reminds him that this guy is always taking the blame for everything. Just casually, Mirai rats out that it was Sakura who started the fight, making Yumemiya ask who the heck that is, so Sakura explains that those guys preach faith and absolute power but are so boring they beat up even the weakest. The fiery speech scared the people around a bit, but Yumemiya pats the newbie's head and agrees that the Shishitoran are indeed dull, and he recalls the boys' fight on the avenue and now helping Sasaki, so he feels happy to have a younger brother he can rely on. Everyone around approves of the gesture, except Subishita. Of course, while Sakura feels a warmth in the tips of his ears, and the more he got irritated, the more his body relaxed. Then he understood that Yumemiya has the power to make everyone feel welcome and secure. Still, Sakura slaps the leader's hand, pretending not to fall for it, but the boss emphasizes that he sees everyone in the city as if they were his family. Suddenly, Kaji calls Hiraji and mumbles the word Shishitoran in distress, setting off alarm bells in the Bafurin. A strangely young voice grabs the attention of the school members, and when everyone realizes the leader of the Shishitoran himself, Shoji Tomiyama, carries Kaji by the hair while demanding a duel against Yuma, calling Yumemiya by his nickname. Mirai goes crazy with the impending war knocking on his door, while Sakura is overjoyed to have found the number one of the rival gang, the only guy stronger than Johto Game. Soon the members of the Bafurin descend to the school entrance, and the leader tells everyone to stay behind. Sakura grumbles that he also wants to fight, but Yumemiya warns him not to speak up again. The boss's harsh and dry words pierce Sakura's ears to the point where he can't even move his feet, keeping him rooted where he was ordered. Yumemiya comments that Tomiyama has something that belongs to him, but the boy keeps using it to provoke the Furin like a spoiled child, until he drops Kaji to the ground and casually steps in front of Yumemiya, challenging the rival leader to a fight. He argues that it was the Furin who started the fight, so there's no shortage of reasons to brawl. Finally, Yumemiya agrees that they started it, but he points out that Tomiyama had his revenge by leaving a pile of bodies behind, so they're even. Tomiyama pauses to reflect on this, while Mirai pleads with him to accept this truce. However, the boy doesn't give in and kicks Yumemiya in the head, leaving everyone apprehensive. However, the Bafurin defends in time, his opponent uses this aggression as an excuse to retaliate, but Yumemiya still wants to understand the reason for this tantrum. Thus, the leader of the Shishitoran explains that it's not that he wants to fight, it's just that he wants only Yumemiya. After all, since he reached the top, Tomiyama has nothing to do, while the guy from the enemy top just sits there laughing from ear to ear with his friends. That hurts Tomiyama, and that's why he wants to end the opponent. Yumemiya shows empathy and acknowledges that it must be difficult for the young man, but a huge group of orange coats arrives at the school to ruin the dialogue. Tomiyama didn't call anyone for a chat, but Johto Game thinks it wouldn't be fun if the boss sorted everything out alone, and it would have been better to hear everything To Game had to say instead of running to the other side of the tunnel halfway through the explanation. With that said, the vice leader of the Shishotoran realizes that he has indeed found his new friend Sakura, affectionately nicknamed Reverse-It because of his hair. Sakura understands if it's one-on-one between the leaders, but he won't tolerate if everyone gangs up on Yumemiya, while Tomiyama orders his subordinates to get out of there. Johto Game understands the boss's motivation, but shows him that this group of Furin isn't alone by pointing to the building, where several others were keeping an eye on the situation. Yumemiya tells everyone to stay where they are and calls the enemy leader forward. Yukinari comments that the boss of the Bofurin chickened out by avoiding a general brawl, but Tsubishita shows he's ready to crush whoever. Minoru points to Sue and calls him Jack Sparrow, a pirate who stinks and only pretends to fight, so Sue fires back saying that Minoru and Yukinari look like a couple of truck drivers with those hairstyles. Tired of the endless chatter, Johto Game gives up and prefers to head back home because it's getting dark and without light, they won't be able to see the Furin's smashed faces. But seeing that everyone there seems to already know each other, Choji Tomiyama changes his mind and proposes several one-on-one fights instead of the classic side A against side B. So Futare pits the two leaders against each other, and he himself against Reverse-It. Yukinari calls Tsubishita to fight, while Minoru takes on Suo. Thus, the two factions agree that they already had enough pairs until an unknown guy named Sako Koda surprises them and throws down the gauntlet, inviting Hiraji to indulge in a buffet of punches. Hiraji recognizes the dude and accepts the offer on the spot. In the end, all the pairs were set, and soon the fighters organized themselves to start the showdown. Sometime later, some members of the Furin gather at the cafeteria where Kotoha works, and while Sasaki asks if it's okay for him to stay there, Mirai is having a meltdown in the middle of the guys. Kotoha serves the food and tells the kid that there's no point freaking out about it anymore, but Mirai doesn't know what to do if tomorrow Yumemiya loses to Tomiyama because there's a risk that Shishotoran will take over Furin High, and they'll all be kicked out or worse. Still, Kotoha boosts the morale of her partners and has no doubt they'll win. Sakura finishes his plate in 20 seconds and already wants to leave, but Mirai tries to convince him to wait for Yumemiya and the rest of the gang. Sakura complains that the guys are taking too long, and besides, he thought going out to eat was an invitation to stuff oneself at a real restaurant. Sue explains that this has been Bofurin's hangout for a while, and occasionally they gather there before fights. At that moment, Yumemiya arrives downcast at the cafeteria, so he immediately calls for the most attentive attendant and shows her the sprouts he's growing this summer. Mirai whispers that Kotoha is the boss's favorite, making Sakura question louder than he should if the two are dating. Straight away, Yumemiya turns around and tells everyone to stop the weird chatter. After all, Kotoha is his little sister, which the girl denies. So Kotoha explains that they were actually raised in the same orphanage, and that's why Yumemiya talks like that. Sakura makes it clear that he was relieved, so the girl lets out a different sigh in return. Soon the leader and the girl talk about both being 16 years old, but the girl seems to be 20 or more. Out of the blue, Tsubishita throws a bench that almost hits Sakura's head, and Yumemiya confirms that Kotoha indeed seems older, leaving Sakura and Mirai surprised. Finally, Hiraji arrives and tells Yumemiya that the boss really loves Kotoha, and if he knew she was in danger, things would get serious. Soon everyone settles to eat, and Yumemiya praises Kotoha's cooking, who tells him to shut up and eat. Meanwhile, Hiraji is struck by a memory that suddenly resurfaces, so he tells Yumemiya that he was thinking about Shishotoran from the past. In the past, it was a society that truly saw power above all, but even with some seriously messed up members, they would never go after a middle schooler. Hiraji recounts that one day there was a serious fight between the two factions, and although everything seemed out of control, there was an implicit code of honor in the confrontations. However, since Choji Tomiyama took control of the Orange Coats, along with Johto Game, that organization lost all the credibility it had, reducing its reputation to that of a nest of reckless troublemakers. In his opinion, Yumemiya believes this is Tomiyama's fault, but they'll only have the answer tomorrow. Sakura questions if this is going to be a fight or a discussion by chance, so the leader of Furin explains that the fist is the language that reveals more about your opponent than words. Suddenly, he loses his seriousness and asks for more food, but Kotoha was already closing the cafeteria. As everyone gets ready to leave, Sasaki draws everyone's attention to thank properly, so he hopes to count on everyone tomorrow. While the members return the vote of confidence, Sakura makes it clear that he won't fight for this kid, so Kotoha explains that this is a Bofurin code of conduct to take care of the younger members. On the way home, Hakura Sakura reflects on what he learned about the language of fists and how he had never thought about it before. The next day, Bofurin crosses the tunnel towards enemy territory, while Sakura realizes that this is the first time he won't fight just for himself. And that's why, even without knowing why, he feels like he can't lose. Soon, the members of Shishitoran meet Furin on the way to start the long-awaited confrontation. Choji Tomiyama greets the enemies as if they were childhood friends and promptly invites everyone to the event location, excited like a child set loose in an amusement park. Taking a look around, Sakura and the others notice that the city controlled by the Shishitoran has more bars than anything else, and Narai imagines the chaos that must ensue every night in these surroundings. Speaking of which, Sakura turns and asks Narai what he's doing there if he's not going to fight. In his defense, he says he was present when the brawl happened. Besides, he's part of the Bofurin, and his desire is to be strong enough to protect himself, so he's there to learn from everyone how to do that. Sakura is pleased with the trust placed in him and tries to hide the feeling, but Sue quickly notices and remarks that it's easy for the boy to blush from embarrassment. At that moment, Hiraji scolds the group for thinking they're taking the situation too lightly, but Yumemiya asks him to ease up because he trusts the boys behind him. So everyone arrives at the base of the Shishitoran, a dirty and ragged place. Narai explains that this base used to be an abandoned cinema known as Orion's Constellation, but it seems they shortened the name to just Ori. As they walk through the corridors, when they enter the cinema hall, all the Shishitoran were scattered around like troublemakers, shouting and breaking everything. Suo realizes the reason they use the name Ori because it means cage. In the case of the Shishitoran, this is the cage of beasts. Narai is almost having an epileptic attack from trembling so much at the base, so Sakura reminds him that he's there to learn and tells the boy to lift his head, which makes Narai compose himself. With everything in order, the faction's maximum leader announces the beginning of the first fight, and Yumemiya finds it curious that they turned this into such a big event. However, despite it seeming like a spectacle, the leader of the Furin faction warns the members that the main fight is between him and Tomiyama, so the others don't need to worry if they lose their rounds. Still, Sakura makes it clear that she doesn't intend to go easy, whether it's worth something or not, and this attitude makes Yumemiya believe that indeed this newcomer is trustworthy. Meanwhile, Tomiyama is anxious and wanted to start the event with the fight between the leaders already, but Togame thinks it wouldn't be fun if it were like that, so Yukinari offers to kick off the event because the Furin's long-haired guy won't stop looking at him, and he finds that too annoying to wait. Yumemiya approves of this opening and puts Tsujishita in the fight, but before he steps into the ring, Sakura warns that the feud between them two hasn't been resolved yet, but also that she refuses to fight again with someone who loses to such unimpressive guys like the Orange Jackets. Taking out his inseparable notebook, Narai analyzes that Yukinari Arima is the powerful type and that he once broke someone's ribs with a punch. Suo comments that Tsujishita has done the same, so the two will get along well in the ring, but Yumemiya doesn't think for a moment that they are alike, although he doesn't elaborate on the reasoning. With the rivals facing each other, the Orange Jacket remarks that the enemy's eyes are truly annoying, and then turns to provoke the Bofurin leader, affecting Tsujishita's fanaticism psychologically, causing him to lose concentration and take a punch. At the same time, the provocation aroused the boy's fury, who makes it clear that his leader should be called Lord Yumemiya as he massacres Yukinari, crushing his head on the ground with a devastating final blow. Seeing Yukinari go blue screen in front of their eyes, the rest of the audience falls silent upon realizing that the rival faction isn't here to play around, including Johto Game himself rethinking the already won atmosphere they were painting until now. However, the top leader applauds the incredible strength of the opponent and rushes to meet the winner and set up a one-on-one between them, so the vice leader quickly calms the young man down and puts him back in his seat. Remembering the brawl in the tunnel, Mirai realizes that it's the second time Tomiyama has been more concerned with extolling a victorious Furin than his own injured ally, so he questions what goes through these guys' minds. Unlike the Orange Jacket, Yumemiya praises the member of his group by patting the winner's face, and even Sakura acknowledges Tsubishima's talent. Sue jokes that Sakura is getting softer by the minute, so the protagonist tries to maintain a tough stance once again by shouting at his companion. Amidst this confusion, Yumemiya tries to overhear the Shishitoran leader questioning the vice leader about how he would defeat the long-haired guy, but all to gain presence is silence. Without getting any answer, Tomiyama orders two subordinates to take the loser out of the ring, while Minoru nervously bites his nails after the beating his friend took. Too lazy to carry his companion, the Orange Jackets responsible for Yukinari toss him under the stage as if he were trash, and even kick the loser's face to belittle the shame of losing according to their philosophy. Once again, Mirai wants to know why these lunatics act like this. Already, Sakura warns the two enemies that she doesn't want to hear any more of this twisted talk of absolute faith and power, because it's embarrassing just to look at the faces of these weaklings. As the duo approaches, Sue comments that they won't understand anything unless they get beaten up, so one of the Shishitoran tells the Furin to make them understand. However, their leader takes on a frightening posture and orders him to let the boy go because he already has a defined opponent. The Shishitoran is terrified by Tomiyama's intimidating gaze, who then acts as if nothing had happened, reverting to his childish ways and promptly orders the next fight to begin. According to the order of the fights, the next one to step into the ring is Suo, who invites his opponent to work out a little and relieve stress. Somewhat reluctant, Kanuma Minoru steps onto the stage at a slow pace, while Suo confesses that he thought Sakura was kind of stupid when he arrived acting like the best in the Furin, but soon he realized there is a core in the boy's actions and words, and that's admirable. While Sakura is furious for being called stupid, Suo promises that he will try not to lose to Sakura when the time comes. Before the duel begins, Sakura asks Mirai to look in the notebook to see who that guy is, and Mirai thought he was talking about Shishitoran, but actually he wants to know who Suo is. So Mirai explains that Suo was famous for being strong since elementary school, but there's nothing else recorded about him in his notebook. Similarly, even Hiraji doesn't know much about the guy, and all Yumemiya has to say is about Suo's kindness. On the ring, Minoru blames the opponent for what happened to Yukinari, so Suo reminds him that he wasn't so concerned about that other guy under the tunnel when he humiliated him unconscious. The orange coat guy explains that he and Yukinari have been inseparable since childhood, while Suo replies that the Shishitoran seem like children who only complain when the water hits their own backs. Hearing that, Sakura questions who can be kind while saying something like that, while Maimoru begins his revenge for his friend by attacking for the first time. Suo defends himself calmly and calls the enemy a bratty kid, but promises to make him stop crying to climb the steps of adulthood. As Minoru rises, he noticed that the opponent dodged his blow in the blink of an eye, so he decides to strike again with maximum speed so he doesn't have time to react. Despite the pretension, in practice, he was just thrown to the ground without difficulty once again, which makes Suo even more playful with the opponent's face. According to him, the enemy's fall was quite beautiful, so he repeats the dose in the next attack he receives, and in the next one after that. Then Suo questions what Shishitoran thinks it takes to become an adult, and indeed it seems that Minoru has no idea what the rival is trying to say with this, so he continues attacking in the same way, as if that would produce a different result from the previous attempts. Faced with humiliation, Shishitori and the audience throw objects on the stage and tell the orange coat guy to stop being a wimp, but this only destabilizes Minoru even more, who is sure he was giving his all in this fight, but everything he tries is useless against this Furin guy. In the midst of this, Yumemiya laughs and comments that Suo is not just a kind kid after all, but Sakura completely disagrees with the boss's statement. In his opinion, Suo has a rotten personality because he doesn't let the inferior opponent live or die, but plays with him like a cat plays with an insect, forcing the rival to remember forever the strength difference between him and his tormentor. If he were in Shishitoran's place, Sakura would certainly prefer to die than go through this traumatizing disdain. Watching the conversation, Hiraji comments that Sakura is quite emotional in this speech, even knowing how the rival faction deals with others' weaknesses, and therefore Yumemiya believes that someone close to him is influencing this kind of thinking in the guy. As for Sakura himself, he just wants to know how he's going to make Suo take him seriously in a fight, making Mirai understand less and less what this guy means. Meanwhile, Minoru is more lost than anything, spinning like a top on the stage from taking so many trips. On the other hand, Suo advances on the enemy with elegance and fluidity, using only the opponent's strength against himself, without even breaking a sweat. After falling to the ground 79 times, Minoru takes a hit to the jugular that even a horse couldn't handle, but the enraged audience continues to demand action from the supposed companion, who can't even look outside the ring because of so much humiliation. Seeing the boss sleeping in the chair and the vice bored, he knows very well what happens to Shishitoran who lose like this, and at the same time Suo insists on knowing the answer about how to become an adult. With all this bothering his head, Minoru freaks out and attacks for the last time because Suo delivers a kick that doesn't even hit the boy's face, but seems to have hurt more than any physical blow. After all, the kick came with the truth that Minoru assumed within his mind the image of the man he laughed at in the tunnel. So Suo teaches that what Minoru needs to be an adult is precisely the ability to put himself in others' shoes, even if only in the exercise of imagination. Thus, after the first lesson, Suo ends the class by saying that the next step to reinforce this imaginative capacity is to turn his fantasy into reality. Next, Suo assumes his combat stance again to continue the duel, but Game orders the fight to end, while Tomiyama wakes up without having seen anything. Minoru tries to convince the second in command that he is still able to fight, but the Vice doesn't want anyone further tarnishing the institution's name. In fact, he declares that Minoru is no longer a companion from this moment on, which the boy knows very well what it means. Finally, Suo steps down from the stage, telling the defeated that becoming an adult means getting involved with people's feelings, and for that, experience and imaginative capacity are necessary, at least even if he hasn't completely changed. Sue believes that the rival has climbed at least one step of this ladder this afternoon. The audience of the fight, formed by the Shishitoran, couldn't believe what was happening. Their initial arrogant demeanor at the event was now turning into genuine fear that the other members of their gang might suffer the same fate as the last two from their team. Yumiya praises Sue for his performance, but the eye patch-wearing boy acts as if it's no big deal, with his strange kindness after publicly humiliating an enemy. Nuri asks if it's Kung Fu or Aikido, eager to jot it down in his notebook, but Sue says his master taught him a mixture of various styles. Hiraji comments that he never imagined to see the winner so emotional, and he admits that he doesn't usually do that, but Sakura messed with his head. Sakura just wants Sue to take it seriously when they both fight, making Nuri question if the kid only knows how to say that all the time. Sue agrees and points out that Sakura is already annoying by saying that all the time, so the boy stands up to make the eye patch pay for what he said. Watching the drama, Yumiya believes that these guys will make a great team. Meanwhile, Minoru is carrying his friend Yukinari away from the stage since his colleagues simply threw him down like garbage. However, the boy was too weak to carry his friend, so he ends up letting his jacket collar slip, causing Yukinari to hit the ground and wake up. Yukinari sees his desolate comrade in the corner, then approaches with difficulty and asks if he was also defeated, but all Minoru could do was repeat, "This is the end," several times. Tomiyama doesn't quite agree with the statement, as he seems extremely excited and motivated to fight the eye patch-wearing rival when the chance arises. Togame ignores the bratty leader and calls the next ones to step into the ring. Sakura stands up with the joy of being able to punch someone in the face. However, Sakura stands up and points to Hiraji, calling the Celestial King for a direct confrontation. Hiraji apologizes to Sakura and heads to the stage, while the young man with different eyes rebels as always. Anyway, the boss trusts the kid to defeat Togame, second in command of the rival gang. Considering the facts, Sue believes that Hiraji surely knows that kid from Shishitoran, something even Yumiya doesn't know, as the fighter with gastritis doesn't usually talk much about his personal life, but it wouldn't be strange for him to know someone outside of Furin. Tomiyama wishes luck to his subordinate, while Togame asks him what's the deal with Hiraji challenging the guy like that at that moment. Sako Koda ignores and heads towards the ring, where the Celestial King comments on how much Sako has grown, but joining Shishitoran was an immature and irreversible decision, and that in the end he will come out victorious. Tomiyama orders to cut the crap and start the fight already, so Seko goes straight for the opponent with speed, impressing everyone around with the technique he displayed. With that, Shishitoran scorned the fact that Hiraji ensured he would come out victorious, as Furin continues to underestimate him to this day. However, Seko Koda is not the same as before, and the Celestial King could feel that from the very first seconds of the duel. After the initial scare, Hiraji manages to get out of the defensive and balance the match. But a kicking technique from the opponent almost catches Furin by surprise. Seeing that the stakes were higher now, the audience goes wild and throws their support behind the orange jacket into action. Nuri notices that the situation isn't easy, while Togame also seems surprised by the performance of the ally. Tomiyama emphasizes that that guy is one of his top 5 favorite fighters, and that even fighting against the Shark's Tooth wouldn't be a problem for the kid. Togame remembers that Koda joined the faction after dedicating himself to beat up most of Shishitoran, and it seemed like that was all the guy cared about, nothing else. Tomiyama adds that Koda is too quiet and only answers everything with yes or no, and Togame thinks that shows the feelings he has for Hiraji when he calls him to fight. During the duels, Seko Koda easily predicts the enemy's moves, mocking the lack of elegance and improvisation of his style, throwing it in Furin's face how he didn't learn anything in these last years. On the other hand, Hiraji recognizes that the opponent learned to never shut up, unlike before when the boy didn't say a word and could bite his tongue if he spoke in combat. Sako doesn't like the memory that remark provoked in his mind and attacks even faster. This time, he lands a spinning kick that staggers the Furin leader. With the enemy down, Seko says he hasn't evolved at all in all this time because he's surrounded himself with spoiled brats who just want to be buddies with each other. At this moment, Sakura draws attention to the ring, but not to Sako, but to the Shark's Tooth. Sakura isn't satisfied with Shishitoran mocking them because of Hiraji's fault, so he tries to call out the slip-up, until Sue laughs and comments that the newbie is finally worrying about his friends. Furious, Sakura replies that the guy is making the entire Furin look like idiots, so Yumiya takes over the conversation and informs Sako that Hiraji is one of the 4 celestial kings of Bafurin, and among them, he is a leader known as Tremonton. Finally, he questions if Seko knows what the other name for Tremonton is. At that moment, Hiraji puts his hand on the rival's shoulder and points out that he hadn't taken a kick like that in a long time, then punches the ground to show that he is far from being defeated. Thus, Yumiya adds that Tremonton is also a name for Bishamonton, the name of the god of war who controls the battlefield. With that said, Hiraji regrets hearing all this nonsense from a high school student while he swallows his stomach pills. Anyway, he confesses that this fight is more fun than he imagined. Years ago, a shy and gentle boy suffered bullying at school just for getting good grades, as he was always peaceful and didn't provoke anyone. The other boys found it annoying that he was a nerd and took advantage of the child's weakness. Suddenly, another kid appears asking what the heck is going on. During a showdown between Hiraji and Seko Kota, the spectators witnessed a fight they weren't accustomed to in their daily lives. Sakura acknowledges that the shark tooth does the trick, and Sue emphasizes that he didn't become a celestial king for nothing. Everyone in town adores him. Sakura feels jealous and retorts that he could have started that way from the beginning, to which Sue replies that regardless what Sakura said to Hiraji made him lose his cool. Meanwhile, the exchange continues at full throttle in the makeshift ring, and Yumemiya celebrates the strength of Shishitoran being represented up there. Togame agrees, but reflects that it's actually Bofurin who's pressing the most. Togame is certain that Sako has noticed that his rival is now stronger than him despite an initial advantage. He just doesn't understand how that's possible, since Hiraji only hangs out with those careless guys and leads a comfortable life. Going back, Seko also didn't quite understand why he was being targeted by the other boys, and Hiraji makes it clear that sometimes people simply mistreat those who are weaker. Speaking of which, he advises Sako to stand firm if he doesn't want to be targeted. For this reason, Kota begs the other boy to teach him how to fight because he can't stand suffering anymore. From then on, Hiraji trained the boy whenever he could, and Seko admired the strength and leadership skills his mentor possessed, naturally gained followers. Years later, Seko congratulated Hiraji for being accepted into Furin, being sure that his instructor would rise to the top of that institution, and he himself wanted to be part of that process by Hiraji's side. However, Furin College had not yet been unified at that time, and for some reason, Hiraji said that Seko shouldn't go with him because he decided to support a guy named Yumemiya at school, so he wouldn't stay on top. Thus, the young man should find another goal for himself. After this event, having learned to fight with a future celestial king, Seko attracts the attention of two orange-coated guys who invite the boy to join their team. Seko questions if there are challenges that are worthy of his abilities, and the orange-coated man assures him there are. Tomiyama insists on fighting the boy right there and then, while Togame informs him that the group's ideology is absolute faith and power, where the truly strong are recognized. Seko doesn't care about all that nonsense. All he wants is to develop until he can defeat Hiraji. So today, he steps onto the stage with the certainty that he cannot lose this battle because, unlike Hiraji, he fought and fought until he became strong like this. Determined, Seko swiftly dodges behind his opponent to catch him off guard, but Hiraji is quicker, unleashing a kick that sends the rival flying. This time, Seko feels that his body is no longer the same as at the beginning of the fight, but still he refuses to be defeated by someone who accepts not being on top. Then Hiraji deflects another casual punch from the opponent and apologizes for not meeting his expectations. Hearing this, Seko loses focus and almost starts to cry, while Hiraji punches him in the stomach and practically takes the boy out of the fight. However, in the end, Seko acknowledges that Hiraji shouldn't apologize because he was only concerned about him. Hiraji just told Sako to find a new goal for himself, but Seko felt lost without his mentor and takes out his frustration on his decision instead of finding his own path. All Seko wanted to hear from Furin was that they should go together, and the frustration of this unfulfilled desire deeply hurt the young man's heart, who saw his future alongside the future Celestial King at Furin College. One day, he even made it clear to his instructor that he had decided to follow him forever to the top of Furin and beyond. At that time, Hiraji already had another idea in mind and didn't know what to say, and this disagreement would cause a profound change in the destiny of both. As they see Seko Kota fallen, the entire Shishitoran crowd around the cinema room gradually loses the flame that ignited at the beginning of the fight, seeing one of their most promising members under Tora Hiraji's feet. Meanwhile, Bofurin rejoices in the audience for another victory, while Tomiyama finds amusement in all of this and just wants his turn to step onto the stage. Johto Game stands up and asks someone to take Sako out of the ring, but no orange coat volunteers to do so. Thus, Hiraji puts the boy on his shoulder and carries him out of the ring alone, carefully placing him in one of the corners of the room. Togame approaches and says that Furin doesn't need to be so careful, while pulling the Shishitoran coat as if taking out the trash, but Hiraji grabs the rival's wrist and tells him to take care of Sako only after his fight because no one knows what might happen. Togame questions what the guy means by that, and Hiraji comments that Shishitoran won't get stronger with them treating their members like that. Togame follows hard but finds it arrogant for Furin to talk about what it doesn't understand. As the Celestial King passes by Furin, everyone greets the leader except Sakura, proud as always. Hiraji sits next to Yumemiya and asks if he doesn't want to know who Seko Kota is after all. Yumiya asks if he wants to talk about it, and as the friend confesses that he doesn't, the top fighter responds that he'll only want to know when Hiraji is ready to tell. Hey folks, if you're digging this anime and want to see more, drop a like down below and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We need your support to hit 90,000 subscribers. Every subscription counts and helps us grow our community. Catch you in the next one.